Welcome to the Innovators Insider Podcast. I'm Richard Doyle, the user group guy, along with Mike LaFleche, my co-host as usual. And today we're going to be talking about zero IT, or the 6 zeros. But first, I guess it's we should probably do our every 2-week weather report, right, Mike?
Yeah, I know. And it's quite exciting. As I'm recording this show with you right now, Richard, it is probably warmer here in Boston than it is in Vegas. It's 77 degrees, sunny. I'm not sure
Oh,
if I have this or not.
you spoke too soon, my friend. It is 92 degrees here in Las Vegas today. We went straight from winter to summer. Although we're due to go back to spring later on this week, so kind of a 3-day heat up here, and we're going to get a few more days of some cool weather, and then we'll be that regular Las Vegas 100 degrees. So I'm looking forward to it myself. I like the warm weather. I don't like to be cold, and the overnight sleeping at the campground is going to be a whole lot easier when it's 65 versus 35. So
Yeah,
looking forward to it. So,
yeah.
hey, we've got a pretty good show today, and I think we've got a pretty great guest too. Why don't you introduce our first guest, and let's get this show rolling.
Absolutely. So this guest has been a member of the Onshape family as long as I've known, and is really, you know, one of the reasons why Onshape is so great, I think, is the operational structure of the company and what makes it up and how it operates. And there's nobody better to introduce to the show than JR, or John Rousseau, here, our VP of Technical Operations. So welcome to the show, JR.
Thanks,
Hello,
Mike.
John.
Thanks, Richard.
JR.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
It's our pleasure for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun time working at Onshape, and it's really fun when it just works. And I thank you and your team for making all that successful, and it's awesome to have you on the show. So first of all, we were just off of Onshape Live, right? And David Katzman, our fearless leader, he was talking about the 6 zeros in relation to Onshape, and some of those numbers. We have like lots of numbers, right? We have like we have millions of users now. We have high net promoter scores. Things like that are great, but some of the most important numbers were the zeros, and that's what I wanted to talk about with you today. And before we get into that, JR, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Like, how did you acquaint yourself with Onshape? How did you get into this whole career of technical operations? What does that even mean? What does your department do? So maybe we can start there.
Okay. Well, I'll kind of start back from the beginning, right? So I started with doing system administration way back a long time in Prime Computer, and I worked my way into development jobs all the way through a company called CloudSwitch, which is about 10 years ago. And the CEO that came into CloudSwitch while I was there was John McElhaney, right, which is one of the founders of Onshape. And so Johnny Mac and I became kind of quick friends. And when CloudSwitch got acquired by Verizon, I spent another year there. Well, Johnny Mac went off to start this company called Belmont Technology, which we call Onshape these days. And so at the end of the first year of Onshape, he and I had a conversation, and I decided to join in leading the operations team. So I've got kind of a history of distributed computing, distributed security with some operations and system administration, and also have a history with emergency medicine. I was a paramedic for 13 years. I was founding member of a search and rescue team, did some search dog training. So I've got a little bit of a diverse background there that I try to bring into the ops world for running Onshape.
And I didn't realize you were at Prime Computer. I should have looked you up, but like that was that has some CAD kind of lineage there with Prime Computer and computer
cred.
And yeah, exactly. So lots of interesting things here I'm learning. That's cool. The 6 zeros. So when you were first, you mentioned Belmont Technology, early days stuff, like what was it like, trying to come up with a new way of building a CAD system that wasn't like a desktop CAD workstation that, people think about what they need to run a CAD system, right? They need a CAD workstation. They need a good amount of RAM, graphics card, fast hard drives, these things are well known, and building Onshape wasn't going to be like that, right? What was it like in the early days trying to come up with what you built?
Yeah, it was completely different, right? So I don't come from a CAD background, so I didn't have a lot of the preconceived notions of how it all was supposed to work or what people were familiar with. But I did have a bunch of experience with running, SaaS services, and so I spent a lot of time actually kind of listening to the rest of the development team about what made a good CAD program, and they spent hopefully a little bit of time listening to me about, how to do things very efficiently in cloud services, right? So you don't have one user on one computer. You have a whole bunch of users sharing resources, and hopefully all of their work kind of time slices nicely in there, so that we can actually get good utilization, make sure everybody gets really good performance, and yet keep it as efficient as possible. So a lot of work of balancing compute loads and memory loads, and moving compute to different places around the planet, so people actually get good performance from wherever they're using Onshape from, collaboration and all of that stuff. So the initial architecture that the team put together in that first year has really stood the time very well. We've obviously kind of iterated on it and scaled it over the past 10 years, but it's really held up very well, and that does a good job supporting our users today.
Yeah. And how is that like let's go to the first zero, right? And try to dissect the zeros, right? So zero backup or disaster recovery time, right? So if we build a system, you have a new system designed in a new way to take advantage of modern compute and everything. You don't have files essentially that you're managing on your servers or on your computer, right? So when we talk about zero backup or zero disaster recovery time in the eyes of the customer, right? How do we do that? Like, what is the magical ingredients to make these happen without spilling the company secrets, obviously?
Yeah, well, I mean, the backup is clearly important, right? We want to make sure that if something goes wrong or somebody deletes something that they didn't mean to, that we can actually get it back. But the nice thing is, because we actually have all of our customers' Onshape documents, we can back them all up together, right? We actually do all of that. So we take encrypted snapshots every 4 hours of all of the customer data and store that in multiple places, in the US, to make sure that we will have it available at all times. And we restore them actually every 3 weeks to make sure that we can restore them. So zero backup for our customers, but a bunch of automation and alerting for my operations team to make sure that the customers don't have to worry about it.
That's interesting too, that you test the recovery, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about having a good backup policy or whatever. I know, and I was a PDM admin, I thought was a very good backup structure, but we never really tested the restore procedure, right?
One of my memories from Prime Computer was we needed to do a restore one day, and I talked to the guy who was doing the backups, and we couldn't produce the restore. This was a lot of years ago. But until you have a restore, you don't have a backup. People on my team hear me say that all of the time.
That's the quote of the show right there. So yeah, and then of course, just with the way Onshape works, users can kind of get their own kind of restore of their own design history as well, which is also a very, very nice benefit of having every single design commitment, in that list to go back to, compare, restore, branch from. You have that entire history right there. So not only on the back end, but from an end user standpoint, you don't have to call up Joe and IT and get the backup tapes, right? It's just self-serve.
It's always there. And in fact, just for 1 second, Richard, is that you talk about zero disaster recovery time. We have had some of our customers have security issues unrelated to Onshape, right? Including one of our customers that got hit by malware and encrypted all of their systems, right? And literally, their engineers drove home, grabbed one of their computers from home, logged back into Onshape, and we're up and working in an hour, right? Because we actually control all of the documents. They didn't have any of that stuff stored on their servers that were attacked.
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful feeling to be able to not be affected by what could have been a very, very bad situation.
Yeah.
Hopefully everything else was okay. And
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely bad for them in other ways, but at least, they could continue the design work that they were doing.
yeah, absolutely.
And just from a very simple standpoint, I mean, I think our friend Too Tall Toby called it forever undo.
Yeah.
Which is something that that CAD users are used to, having a few things they could undo, and then they reach a wall, and it's, well, okay, time to recreate again. So
yeah,
forever undo. I'm going to remember that.
So let's go to item number 2, which I think, 0 scheduled downtime, right? As we're recording this show, we don't have to worry about any kind of downtime with Onshape as you're working with it, right? You have the 3-week updates, right? The 3-week updates happen. Sometimes they happen I could be in the middle of a live webinar. The update happens and everything is okay. I've had that happen before. And
It's the design.
It's by design. So 0 scheduled downtime. What does that mean to you and your team?
Well, it actually means a lot of work for us. So it does. We didn't, when we started this in 2013, we didn't go into this with 0 scheduled downtime. We thought in our head, it's like, okay, we're going to need to do these upgrades. We want to make them as non-disruptive as possible. But we found that with the way that we did deploys, we could actually start up a whole bunch of different servers with the new software on it. Watch to make sure that they're all healthy. There's a lot of automation that goes into the health checks, and then we actually, when they're all healthy, start flowing the traffic from the old to the new servers, right? And so our deployments actually don't have any scheduled downtime in them. You actually, when you can model along, you can exit a document, and then when you go back into the document, you happen to be working on the new software, and we do a lot of work to make sure that happens. Back in 2015, we actually did a Sunday morning scheduled outage, right, to actually change some of the architecture of our databases. And it was a pain. It was actually a bunch of work, and it was disruptive to our customers. And so we started thinking, it's like, well, what can we do so that we don't have to do that again? And so my team has actually done a bunch of engineering and worked with the rest of the R&D along the way so that we can actually do these transitions, even pretty substantial transitions on the background. We've upgraded our ability to do, searching our databases, a lot of the compute instances that we use, but we can do it all without taking any downtime. So it's as seamless as possible. We occasionally do have a bit of unscheduled downtime, which you can see on our status page, but we try to keep that very rare. But the scheduled downtime is 0, and it has been since 2015, and we're actually pretty proud of that.
Yeah, it's really nice to never worry about that. And downtime could also, be really, I mean, there's a number of things that a traditional CAD and PDM system would have to go through for scheduling downtime. As a former PDM administrator, we would have to take down everybody, right? When we did upgrades, right? The license servers, the SQL server, we'd have to make sure that the installs were happening in certain sequences. And then we would obviously have to do all the testing. If this didn't happen correctly on the Friday night we decided to do it and needed help and support from the CAD vendor or whatever it might be, then we're way in the Monday morning. People aren't working. People are being sent home, right? I've, not proud of this, but these things have happened, over the years. I've seen these things happen and been part of these things. So that scheduled downtime is very expensive for companies, I would say, especially when it's unplanned, obviously, planning it, there's certain things, but not having a crash as well, right? That, I think that's probably the kind of another thing that's kind of related to downtime, having a crash tolerant system, right?
One of my favorite subjects. And I think, as a former CAD guy, Mike, you're in the same boat, and the folks that are listening out here, back when we were using file-based CAD, you almost knew when it was going to crash. Some little blip happened, and you stopped and you took your hand off the mouse and you leaned back and you just waited for it, and 9 times out of 10 it happened. And restart, rework.
Yeah, it is this
Yes.
visceral sense. Yeah. Go ahead, JR.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, software crashes do happen, right? It is software. The architecture that we've actually worked on with Onshape is that it is minimally disruptive, right? So sometimes if something really goes wrong, you might see the blue bubble in Onshape. Onshape is disconnected, but you just reconnect, you reload your tab, and you're back in with ideally not losing any work. Maybe the click that you were in progress of doing didn't get saved, but because of the distributed nature of the service, we can handle all of those crashes and make them really not disrupt our customers in any way.
Yeah, it's really nice. In the middle of a command, you lose your internet or you drop off for one reason or another, or it might be an Onshape condition that cause it, whatever it might be, you don't lose it at all. Like, it's so nice. It's such a comfortable feeling. It's a fearless feeling. Like as Greg Brown says in a lot of his talks, that we've had Greg on the show. We should have him on again. But yeah, he, not having to worry about having your hand hovering over Control S on your keyboard all the time. It's just a magical feeling. Like you just get your work done faster, essentially.
No save icon, and that gives us space for another icon. No little pop-ups to warn you that you haven't saved for 15 minutes. Are you sure you want to keep going on this? So yeah, I mean, that's been one of the great things that I've noticed about Onshape. And I'm one of those CAD guys that I like to move fast. I like to click stuff fast. And in the old days, that used to cause some problems. I have a hard time keeping up with Onshape, though. It does such a great job. So
another thing kind of related to this like upgrade thing, number 4 here. 0 time upgrading design data. And this is a biggie. And you might not realize it's a biggie if you're not a CAD administrator or CAD manager, but everybody has seen this issue. But maybe you can jump in a little bit, JR, here, and I can pile on as well. After.
Yeah, there's a bunch of work that happens here. So kind of as we talked a little bit about our backups and our 3-week restores before, as we're coming out with a new version of Onshape, we actually restore the old database, and we actually run that against our new software to make sure that we're actually not going to have any problems with the new software, right? If we rolled out our new software every 3 weeks and we broke your models, if your models didn't regenerate correctly, you would be not happy with us whatsoever. You'd be looking for a different CAD system. So we do all of the upgrading internally. We test it before the new software goes out. We do it in the background with the power of the cloud, right? We actually use hundreds and hundreds of machines to go through and process all of the upgrades after we roll out the new software, so that there's no impact to our customers. They don't actually have to spend any time upgrading. They don't have to have the worry. This is one of the good fearless points. They don't have the worry of, is the upgrade going to cause me to lose work? Is the upgrade going to cause me to lose time? Because we've actually tested that already before the customers even see it.
That can't be understated. I mean, this is a big deal. Like, if you're in CAD System X installed in your computer and you open a file from a previous version, right? It will open in memory on your computer. It's going to open it and it's going to convert it to the new file format, right? So you're going from 2017 to 2020. Opens up and you hit that save button, and that's saved in 2020. You better hope you have a backup of that if you want to open it in 2017 again, obviously without the changes you just made in 2020. But every time that happens, when you go file open and do that, it's taking time because it's converting it on the fly, right? As an end user right now, PDM systems, if you have PDM, there are ways of doing this in a bulk process to upgrade all of your files on your vault, but it rarely goes 100%. I mean, very rarely. I've done this before.
I can count on this hand how many times I've come in the next morning after an overnight scheduling of updating data, only to find that it failed probably 5 minutes after I left the building.
That's the more likely scenario.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what's happening. So not having to ever worry about that, and then have to, because when it happens on the fly, it leads to questions about the versioning of that CAD file. When you're opening it, now it's detected a dirty flag on the file. The design change has happened. It doesn't. So there's a number of things. I could probably rattle down a list of 100. We don't need to go there, because Onshape's doing it for us, and we never have to think about it. You'll see it in the version history. It'll say automatic update or something in the version tree every time it upgrades the document. So you can see when it happens and have a an audited kind of note in time that this is when that happened. Yeah, it's
I think for most people, they just, as long as they know it's happening, they don't really need to see it happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with a lot of the collaboration that we do with, our customers are working with, suppliers and manufacturers all over the world, right? We get rid of all of the headaches for everybody being on different versions. It all just works together.
Yeah. Speaking of versions.
Sorry, Mike. I'm trying to run the controls over here, and we're stepping on each other's toes. So.
Sorry, Richard. What is the next one, Richard? Zero installs.
Zero installs. How many people here are old enough to remember the Windows installer?
Oh yeah.
Well, we all do. I mean, at the time it seemed great, but times have changed. How many classes and things I've taught or been to classes learning about how to do managed deployed installs, and for 20, 50, 100, 200 users at a time, deploying MSI files and doing all this crazy stuff to get the software installed.
I'll bet off the top of your head what an MS 1401 error code is.
I've completely forgotten.
Oh, good for you then.
Yeah, I've got to write in the comments. Feel free in the
yeah, I've got 2 college-age kids, and so they're of the mentality of, what do you mean install something? I mean, why do I actually have to put something on my computer to use? Right? I mean, everything is just on the internet right now. It's all browser based at this point. Their music is browser based. Their homework is browser based. All the project work that they do is just, you can use it from wherever you want to. Yeah. I was talking to my son about the CAD lab, or actually the computer science lab is what the conversation was. And he's like, so you actually had to go someplace to like do your work? I'm like, yeah, there was a basement in a building that we actually had to go to, and that's where the machines were. And there's, with zero installs, you just kind of use whatever machine you've got. You've got your Chromebook or your phone or whatever it is. There's no hassle with that at all.
Yeah, we're surrounded by computing devices now. We don't have to go to the computer and and do our work. We're surrounded. We have computing devices on our bedside table. We have computing devices in our pocket. They're everywhere. I mean, they're just everywhere.
Funny story about when I was early on the Onshape team. We were actually doing a user group meeting in San Francisco, and the presenter came up to me before the meeting started, and he said, "Hey, I can't get my computer running. Is it okay if I use yours?" Well, my mentality, the back of my brain, all of a sudden went to, "Oh no, how can he just use my computer? Does he have his settings?" And then it dawned on me, well, none of that makes any difference. And so I handed him my computer, and he ran Onshape right off of that. I mean, I'm not sure people get how important it is to be running these things on the browser as opposed to running off of a file-based system, off of a hard drive, and just how much better this is.
Right. Being able to have all your settings, after an upgrade, just going to a different computer, all of your S key is programmed the same way that you want. Yeah. Toolbars are the way you want. The language that you sign in as, all of these things just follow you. You don't have to worry about backing up registry files and things like that.
And I mean, you hear all these stories from our customers that go to their customers. They want to show their designs, the things that they're working on, and it's Wi-Fi is locked down. It's like, oh, we'll just use one of the customer's computers, right? Just log right in. There it is.
Yeah. It's you don't have to worry about that, right? It's just sign in, secure. Everything is encrypted, right, JR?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so it's if like let's talk about that just for a second. Like when somebody opens an Onshape document, they have a document, they want to look at it, the information comes down to their computer. Like what's happening there? Like it's encrypted, obviously. So what can somebody intercept that information? Like what's happening there, and what are we doing to help there?
Yeah. So in the security world, we talk about encrypted at rest and encrypted in motion, right? So we'll take the first one first, right? So all of our databases, because we don't store files, we store all of the design data in databases. All of those databases are running on encrypted storage, right? So even if you were able to drive an airplane into the side of AWS's data centers and steal the hard drives that our data is on, you couldn't do anything with it, right? Amazon can't do anything with it, or an attacker can't do anything with it because it's all encrypted there. When you open up your document, we decrypt that data in the database, we do the processing that we want, and then we send it back to the client browser. Well, that's called encrypted in motion, right? And so that communication from your browser all the way to our servers, end-to-end encryption, is done with and we can rattle off all of the keys and the technologies that we use that for. But basically, there's no way that you can intercept any of that traffic until it actually gets back to your browser, and so that really keeps the design data secure.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, if you're using a file-based system, even if you're lobbing files, like that can be intercepted, and if somebody has a file, they can take a copy, do whatever. I mean, that's a big difference. A lot of people will look at Onshape at first and be like, oh, it's in the cloud, I can't trust it, it's not secure. But I think what I'm hearing here is that in fact it's probably more secure in many ways because of the level of encryption that we're using, the data structure, the lack of files being transmitted back and forth.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the attacks you get these days are through email or through browsing. Well, nobody's reading emails on Onshape servers. Nobody's actually using a browser on Onshape servers. The only thing Onshape servers do is run Onshape. And so none of those files and end up back on the customer systems. All we're doing is seeing kind of the graphical representation in the browser. So there's a nice gap there between a lot of the area where a lot of the attacks are happening versus where the files are actually stored, or the data is actually stored.
That's a good point. No lost work. That's item number 6. No lost work. So this one's my favorite one because I lose work all the time in file-based programs. And I think I'm getting worse as I'm getting older and I'm used to the way Onshape works and less used to the way some of the other systems I'll use for video production and Adobe and all these things. It's still file references. It's still, if you crash, you've lost things. You probably have temp files that you could go and find and reconstitute, and like zero lost work is a big thing to say, I think, because everybody in the world of engineering and CAD has lost work in their lives. Every single person, unless they've only used Onshape, which that could happen. I've met people that have only used Onshape, but to have zero lost work, like what does it take to do that? I think it kind of sums up what you've been saying the whole time, right?
Yeah, it's a couple of different things. So one is that we're constantly writing to the database. So any work that you're doing, any fillets that you make, or any updates to drawings that you make, are constantly being saved out to the database, right? So even if something completely went wrong, you lost your internet connection or something like that, that data is safe and saved, and you can always get back to it. And then back to Richard's point earlier of the infinite undo redo, that chain of saves, you can always kind of go back up. So even if you did something that you didn't like, you can always kind of work back to it, to a known good state. But in addition, the idea that you're again collaborating with a bunch of people around the world, right? And so I'm sure you guys have more stories than I've even heard of people building the wrong version of a part, having people take a look and reviewing the wrong version of something, right? So if everybody's on the most up-to-date version because everyone sees the source of truth in Onshape, then you have none of that lost work of, oh, I grabbed the wrong version, I'm not working on the latest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find myself when I'm working with file-based systems like you, Mike, I find myself looking for the branch and doing a file instead of doing the file save as. I've got 3 or 4 different documents going on. You want to make some minor changes and make a separate document out of them. I just as soon have a nice little branch that I could merge, branch off of and make my changes there instead of creating 3 new files. So.
Right. I mean, when you branch, you have like you're showing, how the design evolved, right?
Yeah.
At the moment you do file save as or pack and go, that's all separate. You have no history. There's no way of knowing how this came to be or where it came from. The audit trail is kind of broken at that point, right? You have no idea, how this came to be. But with the branching, right, you just go back, we're down at version 1. Let's branch off of version 1 and create a dev branch here and start coming up with some new feature ideas off of that, right? It's really
I think that's another leg of fearless too, right? Is that you can just try something. Oh, I'm just going to go try something. Oh, I don't like it. We'll abandon it. I really do like it. Let's merge it back into the real piece of work.
Yeah. Sometimes people lose work when their hard drives fail or run out of space, things like that as well. Server issues. We had, I've heard every story, I think, in the book now at Onshape with, servers that have had issues. I don't want to share any details, but, situations that involve all of the elements, can happen to servers. And it's really nice not having to worry about keeping track of that and not running out of disk space. So one of the things I used to do when I was a CAD manager, first thing I would do every morning, come in, open up my terminal window and do a ping time test to all of my remote connected servers. And then I would also check disk space on all of my servers where all the CAD data was replicating to, because if a big replication happened, it could take down the hard drive, right? Because it would run out of hard disk space. And if it ran out of hard disk space, really bad things would happen to the PDM, and everybody would once again be down, have to go home, things like that. It was not fun having to worry about that and spend 2 hours every morning. Of course, tools and techniques have been developed. Reports now can be automatically, scripted to get this kind of stuff. But this was, a few years ago before joining Onshape, before a lot of that stuff was around, or I wasn't smart enough to put together a script. I don't know, but anyway, I had to spend 2 hours a day just checking hard disk space to prevent lost work from happening, right? Because it's just a mind-numbing thing that you have to do, like as an end user CAD administrator who's looking at like trying to improve the productivity and workflows of a company, having to think of these little minutia things. Just, it's nice not having to think about them anymore. That's for sure.
And on my team, kind of the big 3 areas that we're looking at is, we talked a little bit about security, we talked about some data safety, but it's also availability. And we kind of talked a little bit about that with the no schedule downtime, but the idea that we have between 3 and 4 nines of availability. What does that mean? So we have between 99.9 to 99.99% availability, which is between 8 hours and 0.8 hours of downtime a year. And the ability of you always to be able to sit down and type cads.onshape.com into your browser and have something productive happen really prevents you from losing work, right? So whenever you have the idea or whenever you have the time, Onshape is designed to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I'm not even going to calculate the amount of hours in a year, but it seems like between 0.8 and 8 is a pretty low amount of time. That's like a couple of crashes a year, for a traditional desktop CAD, not counting the work you'd have to redo with the lost work of having to rebuild the file after, even if we did go down, you're not going to lose any work. So it's really nice to have the option not to lose your work again if you're using Onshape. It's great. I'm so happy with this. It's it's I don't know. I'm having a reaction right now, JR. It's kind of thinking back to the old days, and now it's the amount of hours in my life that I could have back. It's not good to think about.
For me, it's kind of funny. I mean, after 4 years of using Onshape and using only Onshape, when we have a discussion like this, I'm getting kind of the same kind of reaction, Mike. It's like, I've almost forgotten what it was like back in the old days. And it takes a conversation like this to bring it back up and make me realize, wow, yeah, that was tough back then.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the old, went uphill to school both ways in snow, like that,
So all of these things we've been talking about, let me just throw this out there real quick. Comes, we've got a nice little blog post out there for you folks to read too. And we'll put that link in the show notes for sure. So I've learned an awful lot during this conversation already.
It can be a never-ending discussion. It's a rabbit hole that can keep on going. But this was really helpful, Jared, to get a high-level understanding of what Onshape is doing to help protect and manage your data, give you the availability and access so you don't have to think about this stuff. So really appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. I spend a lot of time talking to our larger customers about security and availability. And, a lot of them do have concerns with the cloud. And most of the time, I'm actually pretty successful with helping them understand that what we do is not as good as what you're doing, but actually quite a bit better. We have dedicated security teams. We have dedicated operations teams and a lot of monitoring. I mean, we have a great responsibility being having to manage all of Onshape user data. And we take it pretty seriously, but we're able to do things at that scale that most of our customers aren't able to do on their own.
Right. Yeah, you have in your back pocket the IT department of not only Onshape, AWS, and all the most modern techniques essentially available, and it's a nice feeling. Is there anything else that we have, Richard, here for the show?
Well, I guess as we're slowly getting to the end here, there's one thing I would like to mention. So Onshape recently came out with the startup program, Onshape for Startups. And there's another blog post that you can go ahead and take a look at here. But what I want to mention is the first user group meeting for startups, and that'll be on April 27th. That happens at noon Central Time. And you can catch that link there. It'll take you right to the webpage, give you a complete agenda on what's going on with that meeting and a registration link. You can sign up, and that meeting is online, open to anyone around the world. But we are trying to focus on the startup community with this group. So if you are a startup that's using Onshape or a startup that's considering a CAD system and you want to take a look at what Onshape can offer, join us at this meeting, and we'd sure love to have you.
Absolutely. I think I'll be there. And
all right. Yeah. You better be there. You're doing one of the presentations. So yeah, I should probably go ahead and mention that Michael will be talking about agile product design, and Dan Kane is going to provide a tips and tricks session. So there's plenty of opportunity for learning and plenty of opportunity for discussion too. I think, which is the main purpose of a first meeting, is to figure out where the group wants to go, the kind of things that they want to see, how often they want to meet. So it's a really important meeting. So, if you have any interest in startups, you'll certainly want to be there.
Absolutely. Well, JR, I think we had a great time today. Thank you again for joining us and sharing everything about Onshape and DevOps and everything that you do. It's really awesome to have you on the team. And
it's great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's certainly been our pleasure.
All right.
And for the folks that are out there listening, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of these podcasts. And I guess we'll see some folks at LiveWorks in a couple of weeks, huh?
That's right. LiveWorks, middle of May, beautiful time in Boston. Definitely come on down. If you're in New England, there's no excuse. And if you're not in New England, it's a great time to come to Boston.
Yeah, Mike and I will be there, so look us up.
As will I.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody. Enjoy.
So long.